Hello and welcome to the next episode of History at Home. My name is Evan, and I'm on the creative team at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. Like all other museums across the Commonwealth, we are currently closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But we're still working very hard to bring history to you until we can open our doors once more. For today's episode, I thought we would give you a special behind-the-scenes view of one of the exhibits on our museum experience. Let's take a look. This case holds two artifacts that are rather small and unassuming, but play a big role in both the lead up to and the aftermath of the Boston Tea Party. The first artifact in this case is a simple paper document dated to 1773, the year of the Boston Tea Party. This document is known as a bill of lading, a legal document that details the type, quantity, quality, and destination of goods being transported. This also serves as a receipt when a carrier delivers goods as promised to a predetermined destination. We still use bills of lading today. This particular bill of lading does not come from a ship directly involved in the Boston Tea Party per se, but it does come from a vessel uniquely tied to the Boston Tea Party story. On November 17, 1773, John Hancock's ship, the Hayley, arrived in Boston. The Hayley was captained by James Scott, an experienced seaman who refused to carry any of the cursed tea aboard his ship. Instead, the Hayley would carry a different kind of cargo, and its arrival would set off a chain of events that would lead directly to the Boston Tea Party. Earlier that same year, the Tea Act was passed on May 10, 1773. Under the Tea Act, the East India Company could ship tea directly to the American colonies to be sold by a select group of merchants. These merchants were called consignees, and they were hand-picked by the East India Company to function as agents of the company in North America. There, they would be given the right to sell the tea wholesale. The tea consignees in Boston were Richard Clark, Isaac and Jonathan Clark, Benjamin Faneuil Jr., Joshua Winslow, and Thomas Hutchinson Jr. and Elijah Hutchinson, both sons of Royal Governor Thomas Hutchinson. These connections to prominent Loyalist families and associated conflicts of interest were not lost on the Sons of Liberty, and thus became a major point of contention during the tea crisis. To make matters worse, the tea that was to be sold in Boston was duty-free, meaning that this tea would be free of import duties and its prices would be regulated for the consignees so that it could be sold cheaply and easily. This would instantly create a monopoly and meant that the tea sold by the consignees would be cheaper than ever, even with the meager 3 penny per pound tax upon tea soon to arrive in Boston. Boston's Sons of Liberty, led by John Hancock, Samuel Adams, William Molyneux, and Dr. Joseph Warren, pressured the consignees to resign their positions and threatened them should they refuse to do so. It's clear that tensions were escalating in Boston. Tensions boiled over when the ship Hayley arrived in Boston, bringing news that the East India Company tea would arrive in the town any day. Also on board this vessel was tea consignee Jonathan Clark, one of the men handpicked by Parliament to take charge of the tea. This news sent Boston into a frenzy, and mobs paid a visit to Clark House, breaking windows, damaging furniture, and injuring some of the occupants. On the day the Hayley arrived, John Rowe, a prominent merchant in Boston and part owner of the Tea Party ship Eleanor, wrote in his diary, "This morning Captain Scott arrived from London. He brings advice that Captains Hall, Loring, Coffin, and Bruce are to bring the tea from the East India Company. This is a measure that is generally disapproved and will remain a great occasion of disagreement between England and America." This disagreement over tea would reach its dramatic conclusion less than 1 month later on December 16, 1773. But the Hayley's connection to the Boston Tea Party story does not end there. This document is dated December 21st, 1773, the day before the Hayley would depart Boston, bound for England. This is the bill of lading from that very journey. It was written by John Hancock's clerk, William Palfrey, and lists the ship's cargo as containing 611 barrels of tar, 334 casks of oil, and 15,000 more or less of white oak barrels and staves. But also on board the Hayley was the personal correspondence of John Hancock to his London agent. In a letter, also from the same date, Hancock would write, "We have been very much agitated in consequence of the arrival of tea ships by the East India Company, and after every effort was made to induce the consignees to return it, in a very few hours the whole of the tea on board was thrown into salt water. The particulars I must refer you to Captain Scott, for indeed I am not acquainted with them myself so as to give detail. No circumstance could possibly have taken place more effectively to unite the colonies than this maneuver of the tea." On board the Hayley were detailed descriptions of the destruction of the tea, as well as a passenger, Dr. Hugh Williamson, a witness to the late transaction at Griffin's Wharf. He would eventually be summoned before Parliament to give his account of the rebellious actions that took place in Boston. Also displayed in this case is the very news of the Boston Tea Party itself. Adjacent to the bill of lading is a bound collection of periodicals from London's Gentleman's Magazine. This publication is one of the very first to be printed in London, announcing details of what would become known as the Boston Tea Party. It features a detailed account of what transpired, as well as England's polarizing reactions to the shocking news. As you might expect, Parliament and King George were furious and accused the town of Boston with an attempt to injure British commerce. In June of 1774, the Coercive Acts would go into effect. These acts were known as the Intolerable Acts in Boston, as they closed the port of Boston as punishment for the town's rebellion. These acts would continue to push America down the road to revolution. Both artifacts on display here at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum are on loan from the Fox family of Bolton, Massachusetts, and of course we thank them for their generosity. Together, these two artifacts serve as bookends to a compelling chapter in the storied history of two nations. And we hope that you'll be able to see them in person again very soon. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of History at Home here at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments section, and let us know if there are any videos that you want to see. For more information on the Boston Tea Party, please visit our website at www.bostonteapartyship.com. Thanks for watching.